Now, if this were the 90s, would my son be stuck in conversion therapy and would I be stuck in my understanding? Welcome to a journey of understanding when you are a Baptist pastor and your son comes out as gay, because that is a journey that I have been on. And I'm sharing that journey with you, and if you'd like to join me on that journey, please hit subscribe and also hit the bell to be notified when I release new videos. But thank you for joining us today, and let's go sailing. Well, if you joined me last week, we went back to the 1990s when I was a new pastor and just starting out. And we're going to go back there again to those early days of my ministry as a pastor. And I can remember going to this very large Christian bookstore. And I remember being overwhelmed by, well, actually not by all the books that were there. I was overwhelmed by the thought that I really should be reading all of them. You see, there's a bit of a sense as a pastor that you're supposed to know everything about everything. And not only are you supposed to know everything about everything, you're kind of supposed to know what God thinks about everything too. So that's easier said than done, isn't it? And a lot of people think that when you go to seminary, you go there to learn everything about everything, but not so. Actually, seminary is more about learning how to learn. It's really a launching place so that you can spend a life of learning. And so go back to the early days of my ministry, and there I was with this feeling of being overwhelmed. Wow, I need to have a book from at least every section of every topic. I need to know something about everything. And so the question is, what did I know about Christianity and gender identity and sexual identity? What did I know about Christianity and people who are LGBTQ+? Although, of course, we didn't, I don't think we knew the acronym was that long back in the 90s. But what did I know? Well, here's what I knew at that time. I knew what the Bible said, and specifically there are certain passages that speak specifically to. So I knew what the Bible said, and I knew what the Baptist tradition was about how we understand those passages. So that I knew. What I didn't know, of course, was how would I help somebody that comes to me who is gay and says, "Pastor, I'd like to become a Christian," or indeed somebody who comes to me as a Christian and says, "Pastor, I'm gay." How best do you minister to somebody when that happens? How do you help them? How do you be the greatest help to them? So that I didn't really know too well, except I did come across an article, especially that spoke to me about, this is the solution. This is helpful. And it was an article on this organization called Exodus International. And what this organization did was it would take people would come to it who had same-sex attraction, and through counseling and therapy and whatnot, it would help them to deal with that same-sex attraction. Basically, it would take a gay person and make them straight, called conversion therapy, and sometimes known as ex-gay ministries, because you go through this and you're no longer gay, so you're ex-gay. So that sounded like a good thing to me. Knowing what I knew about the Baptist understanding of sexuality, and also, of course, the great hope that we have of God working in our lives and bringing change into our lives, this was something that I thought would bring great hope to people, or great hope to anybody that came to me saying, I'm gay, help me figure this out. What does it look like to be a Christian? So that sounded like it. It's the perfect solution, right? Easy. Well, not easy and less than perfect. Now, it had already started dropping off my radar in the 2000s, but by 2013, somewhere in there, the president of the organization, Alan Chambers, basically said, "This isn't working. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It's never worked." And well, I'm going to read a quote to you, and I'm actually going to put it on the screen here, and I kind of realize now that that's probably far too small for you to see, and my head's probably in the way anyway. So let me just read it to you. And here's what Alan Chambers had to say. "I am sorry for the pain and hurt many of you have experienced. I'm sorry that some of you spent years working through the shame and guilt you felt when your attractions didn't change. More than anything, I am sorry that so many have interpreted this religious rejection by Christians as God's rejection. I am profoundly sorry that many have walked away from their faith and that some have chosen to end their lives. And that's a quote from the president of Exodus International shortly before it closed, it folded, when they realized not only did it not work, not only did it not help, but actually it was creating harm. Now here's the scary thing for me is that if I were older and if our boys were older, is it possible that, if our son had come out to us as gay in the early days of my ministry, would I actually have sent him, or would we have actually have sent him to something like Exodus, some sort of ex-gay ministry, some sort of conversion therapy? Would I have sent him? And how would that have gone? Would I have done actually more harm than good by doing so? My wife and I watched a movie a couple of years back called Boy Erased, and it's this story. It's a true story about this young man who comes out as gay, and he tells his parents, of course, and his dad happens to be a Baptist pastor. It sounds like a familiar story, but this family, they do choose to send their son to conversion therapy. They do send him to something like Exodus. And I don't want to spoil the movie for you, but let's just say it didn't go well. It didn't go well for the son. It didn't go well for anybody. And the scary thing for me is that if our son had come out to us in the 90s, that could have been our family. That could have been our experience. And it scares me too that not just for my family, but if anybody came to me back in my early days of ministry looking for help, that might have been their experience. And I might have sent them, rather than being helpful, I might have sent them to something very harmful. And I myself may have been saying things to them that was not helpful, but instead could be harmful. So that scares me to think back to that time. And I'm so glad that, we didn't have a child coming out as gay to us back then, but neither did I have anybody really looking for my help back then. I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't know enough then. Now, I thought I knew enough. I thought I had the answer. I thought I had the perfect solution when I came across Exodus. Well, this is it. This will help people. I thought I had it. I thought I knew it. But now I realize I didn't. And would I have had the courage back then to really dig into it, to learn more about it before sending someone there, before sending my own child there? Would I have had the courage to dig deeper? You see, when it seems like such the perfect solution, when it seems like this fits with our theology of hope, of helping people change in Christ, when this seems to fit so beautifully with Baptist understandings of life and sexuality, would I have been courageous enough to look at what the detractors were saying? Would I have had the courage to listen? And you know what? That's a question for us, really. And I've been describing this journey. If you joined me on the first one, you'll know my description. This is like sailing down a long lake, and on one side on one shore there are those who are in an affirming position, and on the other shore there are those who are in a traditional position on all things LGBTQ+. And as for myself, sometimes I find myself sailing one way and sometimes the other way towards the other shore. And so what we can say is that there are people speaking with great courage. There are those who are on the affirming shore who are speaking with great courage to a very traditional church. And there are those on the traditional shore who are actually speaking with great courage into the winds of change, into a society that is changing so much in our day. And so there are a lot of people speaking with great courage. But I think the question actually is, are we listening with courage? You know, there's many people speaking courageously, but are we listening courageously? I thank you for having the courage to sail with me on this part of the journey, There's much more to come, and I hope you'll join me next week as we keep sailing, as we continue along this journey. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me. I'm so used to closing off a church service and saying joining us as in our church family, but this is just me doing this. Thank you for joining me on this part of the journey, and God bless you, and thanks again.